Long before modern life, people did not fear being alone. So why did silence still feel so deep? If you are listening at night, tell me where you are and what time it is. Welcome to Dreamy Old Stories, where we tell slow and gentle tales from history. Stories that calm your mind and help you fall asleep. The night is quiet, and the world feels soft around the edges. Somewhere, far away in time, a small oil lamp burns with a steady, patient flame. Its light rests gently on stone walls, on woven mats, on a simple wooden bowl left beside a sleeping place. Nothing is hurried here, nothing is loud. The past does not rush. It simply waits, like a slow breath in the dark. If you listen closely, you may begin to notice the presence of people who lived long ago. They are not speaking to us directly. They are only living quietly in their own time, walking across cool earth before sunrise, sitting beside rivers that move without effort, watching smoke rise from fires that warm both hands and thoughts. Their world is smaller than ours, but it is full of seasons, of rituals, of long silences between words. And in those silences, something familiar begins to appear. Loneliness is not a new feeling. It did not arrive recently, and it did not wait for modern cities or crowded streets. Long before written history, long before great empires lifted their heavy stones into the sky, human beings sometimes felt the quiet distance between themselves and others. Not always, not constantly, but often enough that traces of it remained. Like soft footprints pressed into ancient soil. In early villages, people lived close together. Huts stood near one another, sometimes sharing warmth. Voices traveled easily through thin spaces. The sound of grinding grain, the rhythm of weaving, the murmur of evening talk. Life was shared because survival required it. Yet even in closeness, the human mind could wander somewhere private. A person could sit beside a fire, surrounded by family, and still feel a small, unnamed separation. Not pain exactly, not fear. Just a gentle distance, like watching rain fall from inside a shelter. Ancient languages did not always have a single clear word for loneliness. Instead, they described states of being alone, of wandering, of separation from the group, from their land, from the gods. In some places, to be alone was peaceful. In others, it was unsettling. Meaning shifted like sand under slow water. In the deserts of early Egypt, a traveler might walk for hours with only wind and sky as companions. The desert was not empty to them. It was alive with unseen forces, with spirits, with quiet watchers. Beyond sight, to be alone, there was not always loneliness. Sometimes it was closeness to something larger, something patient and eternal. Yet when the journey stretched too long, when no human voice broke the silence, the heart could grow heavy in a way they did not always explain. In ancient Mesopotamia, where rivers curved through fertile land, cities rose slowly from mud and brick. People gathered in markets, temples, courtyards, filled with the soft shuffle of sandals. Community was everywhere. Still, old writings pressed into clay tablets reveal moments of deep personal reflection. A man speaking to his God in the stillness of night. A woman mourning quietly beside a river. Words shaped not for crowds, but for the silent space between. A single person and the unknown. In these moments, Loneliness appeared not as failure, but as a human condition, gentle and persistent, far away. In early Chinese settlements, scholars and wanderers sometimes chose solitude. Bamboo groves, mist-covered hills, distant pavilions where one could sit and listen to the wind moving through leaves. Here, being alone was often linked with thoughtfulness. A person stepped away from society not because they were rejected, but because quiet allowed the mind to settle like still water. Yet even chosen solitude could slowly become something deeper. A faint ache, like missing a song whose melody one almost remembers. In ancient Greece, people spoke often of friendship, of shared meals, of voices raised together in conversation. The public square was a place of gathering, of belonging. To be outside that circle could feel unsettling. Greek thinkers noticed this. They wrote about humans as social beings, shaped for connection. Yet they also described philosophers who walked alone beneath open skies, searching for meaning in silence. Some found peace there. Others found questions that echoed without answer. And so loneliness, in ancient times, was not always dark and not always avoided. It moved quietly between meanings, sometimes sacred, sometimes sorrowful, sometimes simply present, like the steady passing of seasons. It did not shout. It did not demand attention. It existed in pauses. In the space after a conversation ended, in the moment before sleep arrived, in the long path between one village and another, night deepens. The small oil lamp still burns, though its flame has grown softer now. Somewhere, an ancient figure sits awake while others rest, not distressed, not afraid, just aware of a quiet. Space inside, wide and calm, where thoughts drift slowly like distant clouds. Time moves, gently and without urgency, carrying us further into their world, where solitude and connection continue their quiet dance. The flame of the small oil lamp trembles slightly, though no wind can be seen. Outside, the night remains patient and wide, holding the quiet shapes of hills, rivers, and sleeping homes. Time moves slowly here, almost unnoticed, like water slipping past smooth stones. The ancient world continues to breathe in, long, unhurried. Rhythms, and within those rhythms, human hearts move softly between togetherness and distance. In many early societies, the group was life itself. Families worked side by side, planting seeds, shaping tools, tending animals, sharing simple meals beneath open skies. The circle of community was strong, woven from need and habit and shared memory. To belong meant safety. To be seen meant survival. And yet, within this closeness, there were moments when a person's thoughts drifted beyond the circle, wandering into a quiet inner landscape where no one else could follow. In ancient India, long before cities grew dense and loud, wandering, sages walked forest paths alone. Their solitude was not always loneliness. It was a search, a listening. Beneath tall trees, beside slow rivers, they sat in stillness, watching the movement of breath, the passing of clouds, the rise and fall of their own awareness. Old writings speak gently of this state, where being alone became a doorway rather than an absence. Still, even in sacred solitude, the human heart sometimes remembered the warmth of voices, the comfort of shared presence, and a subtle longing could appear, quiet as evening mist. In the highlands of early Persia, travelers crossed, long distances between scattered settlements. Journeys lasted days, sometimes weeks, under vast skies filled with silent stars. Companionship came and went like passing weather. A traveler might walk beside others for a time, sharing stories and bread, then continue alone when paths divided. In those long solitary stretches, thoughts deepened, memories surfaced slowly. The sound of one's own footsteps became a kind of conversation, steady and familiar. Loneliness here was not always sharp. Often, it was a soft awareness of being a small presence within a very large world. Across the sea, in ancient Greece, poets sometimes wrote of figures standing apart from the crowd. Not rejected, not forgotten, simply separate for a moment. A shepherd watching over quiet hills, a sailor gazing at endless water, a thinker pausing beneath olive trees while distant voices faded into the background. These scenes were not filled with despair. They carried a gentle stillness, where solitude allowed observation, and observation allowed understanding. Yet the Greeks also knew that too much separation could weigh on the spirit. A person removed too long from shared life might feel untethered, like a small boat drifting without shore. In early Rome, life was busy with movement and order. Streets echoed with footsteps, markets murmured with trade, homes gathered generations under one roof. Still, Roman letters and private writings reveal something softer beneath the surface. A soldier stationed far from home writing quietly of distant family. A widow sitting in the hush of late afternoon. A scholar reading by dim light while the city slowly sleeps. These moments were not dramatic. They were simple, human, and gently reflective. Loneliness appeared here not as isolation from all, but as a pause between connections, a quiet room inside the noise of life. In the northern lands, among early Germanic and Celtic tribes, long winters brought deep silence. Snow-covered paths, forests stood still, and nights stretched long and dark. Families gathered close to fires, telling stories, weaving memory into warmth. Yet outside the glow of the hearth, the world felt vast and empty. A lone hunter moving through frozen woods might feel both strength and solitude. The cold air carried no voices, only the soft crunch of snow beneath careful steps. In these landscapes, loneliness sometimes blended with resilience, becoming part of endurance, part of simply continuing. Not all solitude was accidental. Some people stepped away deliberately. Hermits in various traditions chose remote caves, deserts, or mountain edges. They sought distance from distraction, from noise, from the restless pull of ordinary life. To them, being alone was not abandonment, but clarity. Stillness revealed thoughts otherwise hidden. Silence revealed emotions otherwise unnoticed. Yet even these quiet seekers sometimes wrote of moments when the absence of human presence felt heavy, like a long echo fading slowly into emptiness. Across cultures, ancient people did not always try to remove loneliness. They observed it, they lived beside it. Sometimes they gave it meaning through stories, through rituals, through quiet acceptance. In myths, heroes wandered alone through forests or deserts before returning, transformed. In songs, voices softened when speaking of separation and reunion. Loneliness was not always named, but it was known. Like dusk slowly becoming night. The lamp burns lower now, its light warm and steady against the darkness. Somewhere in this ancient world, a figure sits quietly, listening not to voices, but to the gentle movement of their own thoughts. Not troubled, not entirely at peace, simply present in that soft, familiar space where human beings, across time, have always found themselves now and time continues to drift, carrying us forward, deeper into the quiet understanding of how ancient hearts lived with solitude, neither fully embracing nor fully escaping it, but allowing it to pass through them like a slow and patient tide. The night has grown deeper, though nothing feels heavier. The small oil lamp gives a softer glow now, and its light seems to breathe, rising and falling with quiet patience. Around it, the ancient world continues in gentle motion. A door closes somewhere. A distant animal shifts in sleep. A faint wind touches the edge of woven cloth and moves on, leaving stillness behind once again. Loneliness, in these distant times, was rarely loud. It did not arrive like a storm. It appeared slowly, like twilight spreading across open land. Many ancient people did not resist it. They noticed it, the way one notices the cooling of evening air or the slow fading of footsteps along a path. It was part of being human, though not always spoken of directly. In small farming settlements, the day was filled with shared labor. Hands worked soil together, lifting, planting, gathering. The rhythm of life was communal and steady. Yet when the day ended and darkness settled gently over the fields, each person returned to their own inner world. A farmer might lie awake for a moment longer than expected, listening to the quiet breathing of others nearby, feeling a faint sense of distance that could not be measured or explained. It was not sadness exactly, more like standing at the edge of a wide, invisible space. Ancient stories sometimes reflected this quiet separation. In early myths from many lands, there were figures who walked alone for a time, not forever, just long enough to feel the silence between themselves and the world. A shepherd in distant hills, a wanderer beneath endless sky, a seeker moving through forests where no voice answered back. These journeys were not always filled with hardship. Often they were calm, reflective, and slow. Loneliness in these tales, it was not always a burden. Sometimes it was a passage, a gentle crossing from one state of being to another. In early Hebrew writings, one can find soft echoes of solitude, a figure sitting quietly in the wilderness, a voice calling out, not always receiving an answer. The desert, wide and silent, became a place where human beings met both stillness and themselves. To be alone there could feel vast, almost sacred, yet also deeply human. The heart could feel both comforted and exposed beneath open sky. In ancient Japan, long before crowded cities, there were quiet villages surrounded by mountains and mist. Life followed the rhythm of seasons, rain falling softly on rooftops, leaves drifting slowly to the ground. People lived close to nature, and solitude often carried a gentle beauty. A person walking alone along a narrow path might feel neither abandoned nor troubled, simply aware of their own small presence within a much larger world. Yet even here, poems written in delicate lines speak of moments when the absence of another voice felt like a faint hollow, barely spoken, yet understood. Some ancient philosophers believed that solitude allowed the mind to settle into clarity. Without the noise of constant interaction, thoughts moved more slowly, more clearly, like clouds drifting across a wide sky. But they also understood balance. Too much separation could leave a person feeling unanchored, as if floating slightly beyond reach of others. So people returned again and again to community, to shared meals, to simple presence beside one another. Even in great cities of stone and dust, loneliness could appear quietly. A merchant closing his stall at dusk, a servant finishing tasks after others slept, a guard standing beneath stars while the world rested behind closed doors. These moments were small and ordinary, yet deeply human. The feeling was not always sharp or painful. Often it was soft and passing, like a shadow moving across a wall. Ancient healers and thinkers did not always try to remove loneliness. Instead, they folded it gently into the understanding of life itself. Just as there were times of gathering, there were times of separation. Just as there were seasons of growth, there were seasons of stillness. Loneliness was not always an enemy. Sometimes it was simply a quiet companion, reminding a person of their place within the wider flow of existence. The oil lamp flickers once, then steadies again. Somewhere, footsteps move softly across packed earth, then fade into silence. An ancient figure rests, eyes half closed, not fully asleep, not fully awake, drifting in that familiar space where thoughts loosen and time slows. Around them, the world remains calm and unchanged, holding both solitude and connection in gentle balance. And so the ancient night continues, unhurried and wide, carrying forward the quiet understanding that loneliness, like many things, was never entirely dark nor entirely light. It was simply present, moving softly through human lives, as natural and passing as the slow turning of the earth beneath a silent sky. Morning arrives slowly, almost unnoticed. A pale light spreads across distant hills, touching rooftops, riverbanks, and quiet roads where no footsteps yet move. The world of long ago wakes without hurry. Smoke rises gently from early fires. Birds begin their soft calls. Somewhere a door opens and the day begins again, steady and familiar. Time has passed, though not in any urgent way. The ancient world continues to unfold, and with it, the quiet presence of human solitude remains, neither hidden nor fully revealed. People move through their routines, gathering water, preparing grain, tending animals, exchanging brief words that drift easily into silence. Yet beneath the rhythm of daily life, the human heart still carries its private spaces, wide and calm, where loneliness sometimes rests like a shadow at noon, faint but present. In ancient Egypt, priests and scribes often spent long hours in stillness. Inside temple walls, cool and dim, they wrote symbols slowly onto papyrus, each stroke careful, deliberate. The temple was not noisy. Its silence was deep, layered with the echo of footsteps and distant chants. Here, solitude was not unusual. It was part of devotion, part of listening to something unseen. A scribe might sit for hours, alone with ink and red, yet not feel abandoned. Still, when the day stretched long and human voices faded, a quiet awareness of separation could appear, gentle as a drifting cloud. Along the Nile, farmers worked together during planting and harvest, but the river itself often carried solitary figures. A fisherman standing alone in a small boat, watching the slow ripple of water. The wide sky above, the endless flow below. In such moments, the world felt vast, and a person felt small within it. Not lost, not frightened, simply aware of their own singular presence. In ancient Greece, thinkers sometimes walked beyond the busy squares into quieter spaces. Olive groves, narrow paths, shaded hills where only wind and leaves moved. They spoke of the human need for companionship, yet many also described the value of being alone. Solitude allowed observation. It softened noise. It revealed patterns, otherwise hidden by constant conversation. But even those who valued quiet knew the gentle pull of return, the comfort of shared presence waiting somewhere beyond the stillness, across the sea. In early Rome, letters carried soft traces of personal loneliness. A traveler far from home writing slowly by lamplight. A poet describing the hush of late evening when streets emptied and footsteps faded. These writings were not dramatic. They did not cry out. They simply acknowledged a quiet space between one person and another, a space that sometimes widened in the absence of familiar faces. In ancient India, forest hermitages stood far from villages surrounded by trees and soft-moving rivers. Those who lived there often sought inner calm, stepping away from the closeness of community. Days passed in silence, broken only by birds, wind, and the gentle rhythm of breath. Yet even chosen solitude had its changing tones. Some days felt peaceful and full. Other days carried a faint echo of distance, like hearing a familiar song from very far away. In early China, scholars sometimes withdrew from busy courts and crowded towns, choosing remote pavilions where mist rested on hills and bamboo leaves whispered softly. Their writings often spoke of quiet reflection, of finding harmony within stillness. Solitude was not always sorrowful here. It was thoughtful, observant, like watching water flow without trying to change its path. Still, even within calm retreat, there were moments when a person remembered laughter, shared tea, the simple warmth of another voice. In desert regions, where caravans moved slowly across open land, loneliness often traveled with the wind. A lone traveler walking between distant horizons felt both freedom and distance. The desert did not rush. It did not speak. It simply stretched outward, wide and silent. Some found comfort in its vastness. Others felt a soft heaviness, not sharp, but lingering, like a question without words. Ancient societies did not always separate solitude from life. Instead, they allowed it to move quietly through ordinary moments. A potter shaping clay in early dawn. A shepherd watching slow-moving clouds. A mother awake before others, listening to the hush of morning. These were simple scenes, repeated across centuries, where loneliness was not dramatic or overwhelming, just a gentle awareness that each human being walks partly alone. Even while living among many, the sun rises higher now, warming stone and earth alike. Voices begin to fill the air, soft and unhurried. The world feels awake, yet calm. And within it, solitude continues its quiet presence, neither demanding nor disappearing, simply existing as it always has, woven softly into the slow and steady rhythm of human life. The day has settled into its gentle rhythm. Light rests softly on stone paths and open fields, and the air carries the quiet sounds of ordinary life. Somewhere, water moves along a narrow channel. Somewhere, grain is turned slowly beneath careful hands. Nothing feels rushed. The ancient world continues, steady and patient, and within its calm movement, the quiet experience of solitude remains. Neither hidden nor emphasized, simply present. As the sun climbs higher, people gather in shared spaces. Markets hum softly with trade and murmured voices. Sandals brush dust from well-worn roads. Children move between shadows and sunlight, their laughter brief and light, fading as quickly as it arrives. Yet even in these places of togetherness, the inner world of each person remains private and distant, like a small room no one else can fully enter. In ancient Mesopotamia, the earliest cities rose between slow rivers, their walls enclosing homes, temples, and narrow streets. Life here was close, layered, and shared. Still, clay tablets pressed with careful writing reveal moments of quiet personal reflection. A person speaking inwardly to their God during the stillness of night. A widow remembering a voice that no longer answers. A worker resting at dusk, watching shadows stretch across the ground. These moments did not seek attention. They were simple recognitions of being one among many, yet also separate, like a single star within a wide sky. In early Egyptian life, loneliness sometimes appeared not in absence, but in distance of role. A pharaoh, surrounded by attendants and ceremony, might still feel removed from ordinary human closeness. Their position lifted them high, yet separated them quietly. Ancient inscriptions rarely spoke directly of such feelings. Yet within hymns and prayers there are hints of longing for guidance, for connection beyond ritual and duty. Even in greatness, a human heart remained human. Far to the east, in early Chinese poetry, solitude was often painted in soft images. A lone boat drifting across mist-covered water. A traveler pausing beneath pale moonlight. Bamboo leaves trembling in evening wind. These scenes were not filled with despair. They carried a gentle calm, where being alone was part of observing the world with quiet attention. Still, within the beauty of such stillness, poets sometimes whispered of distance, of missing companionship, of the faint echo of voices remembered, rather than heard. In ancient India, long roads connected villages, forests, and distant kingdoms. Travelers walked these paths slowly, sometimes with companions, sometimes alone for long stretches. Along the way, roadside shelters offered rest, shade, and brief company. Then the journey continued, and silence returned. Old stories tell of wanderers who felt both peace and ache within solitude, like to soft currents moving in the same river. Loneliness was not always something to escape. It was something to notice, to understand, to allow without resistance. In the Greek world, philosophers often reflected on the balance between community and solitude. They observed that humans naturally seek one another, sharing speech, thought, and presence. Yet they also saw that moments alone could bring clarity, allowing a person to listen inwardly. Some describe solitude as a mirror, quiet and honest. Others warned that too much separation could dim the spirit, like a lamp burning without oil. These reflections were calm, thoughtful, and without urgency, simply part of understanding human nature. Across northern lands, where forests stretched long and winters lingered, solitude was woven into daily survival. A woodcutter moving through silent trees. A watcher guarding the edge of a settlement beneath wide star-filled sky. Snow falling softly, covering sound, covering paths. In these quiet landscapes, loneliness was neither rare nor overwhelming. It blended with endurance, with patience, with the steady continuation of life through changing seasons. Not all loneliness was personal. Sometimes it belonged to the land itself, or so ancient people felt. Empty plains at dusk, abandoned paths, slowly reclaimed by grass, ruins where voices once gathered. These places held a quiet stillness that mirrored the inner silence of those who passed through them. A person walking alone through such spaces might feel a deep, wordless reflection, as if the world itself shared in that gentle solitude. The afternoon light begins to soften now. Shadows lengthen across the ground, stretching slowly and without sound. Somewhere, a bell or distant call marks the turning of the day. People return gradually toward homes, toward fires, toward shared spaces where voices will rise again, calm and familiar. And yet, even as community gathers once more, the quiet presence of solitude does not vanish. It remains subtle and steady, moving softly within each person, like a quiet tide beneath the surface of ordinary life. Evening approaches without hurry. The light of the sun softens and spreads thin across the land, touching rooftops, trees, and distant hills with a quiet glow. The ancient world begins its gentle turning toward night once more. Fires are prepared, doors close softly, voices grow fewer, then quieter, until the air holds only faint traces of sound. The rhythm of the day slows, like a breath easing into rest. In many ancient homes, the evening was a time of gathering. People sat close, sharing food, warmth, and simple presence. Stories were spoken slowly, sometimes repeated, sometimes left unfinished as sleep approached. Yet even within these shared spaces, the private inner world of each person remained untouched. A young listener might stare into the fire, lost in thoughts too soft to name. An elder might remember distant seasons, faces long gone, voices fading into memory. Loneliness here was not always sharp or painful. Often it was a quiet companion, sitting gently beside reflection. In ancient Greece, some philosophers described the evening as a moment when the soul naturally turned inward. The noise of the day faded, and a person became aware of their own thoughts in a deeper way. Solitude was not something to fear. It was part of being human. Yet they also understood the warmth of companionship, the steady comfort of shared existence. Loneliness, then, was neither enemy nor friend, simply a passing state. Like twilight between day and night, across the wide deserts, nightfall carried a different kind of stillness. The air cooled quickly, and the sky filled with silent stars. Travelers resting beside small fires often sat without speaking, listening to the vast quiet around them. The desert did not feel empty to them. It felt immense, timeless, and watchful. Still, within that vastness, a person could sense their own smallness, their own separateness, not with fear, but with gentle awareness. Loneliness here was wide and quiet, like the open horizon itself. In ancient India, sacred texts sometimes spoke of the self as something both connected and alone. Even among many, the inner being walked its own path. Evening meditations often took place in soft silence, where thoughts slowed and breath deepened. In such moments, solitude could feel peaceful, almost luminous. Yet human hearts were not without longing. A distant memory, a missed voice, a subtle ache could arise. then fade again like ripples on still water. In early Chinese villages, lanterns glowed softly as night settled over fields and narrow paths. Families gathered, then gradually withdrew into sleep. Outside, the world became quiet except for wind moving gently through leaves. Poets often described this hour with delicate simplicity. A lone figure beneath moonlight, the sound of a flute. Far away, the stillness of water reflecting stars. These images carried no urgency, only a calm recognition of being present, alone yet not abandoned. In ancient Rome, when the busy streets emptied and footsteps faded, another quiet world emerged. A guard standing beneath a dim torch, a writer finishing a final line by fading light, a mother watching over a sleeping child. These were ordinary moments, unnoticed by history, yet deeply human. Loneliness appeared softly here, not as isolation from all, but as a pause within connection. A quiet space where thoughts wandered gently. As night deepens, the ancient world grows still again. The oil lamp burns low, its small flame steady but fragile. Somewhere, a figure lies awake for a little while longer, listening to the slow rhythm of breathing around them, feeling that familiar, gentle distance that humans across time have always known. Not distressing, not overwhelming, simply present, like the hush between waves. And so the second passage of this quiet journey drifts onward. Loneliness in ancient times was not always named, not always understood, yet always part of the human experience. It moves softly through lives, appearing and fading, like the slow turning of day into night, like the quiet rhythm of the world itself, continuing, unbroken and calm. The night loosens its hold, and a soft grey light begins to gather at the edge of the world. Nothing stirs quickly. The ancient earth wakes the way it always has, slowly and without effort. A faint chill rests over fields and rooftops. Dew settles quietly on grass. Somewhere, a bird offers a single note, then waits, as if listening for an answer that may or may not come. Time has drifted forward again, gentle and unmarked. People of long ago rise from sleep, step into the cool morning, and begin another. Ordinary day. The rhythm is familiar. Water is carried. Fires are coaxed back to life. Grain is ground in steady circles. And beneath these small, repeated actions, the inner life of each person continues its quiet unfolding, where solitude sometimes appears like a thin mist, soft and barely seen. In the early highlands of Anatolia, small communities rested between stone and sky. Life was shared, yet the land itself invited moments of stillness. Shepherds guided animals across wide hills where voices faded quickly into open air. A lone figure standing among grazing flocks might feel both part of the world and gently apart. From it, the wind moved freely. Clouds passed slowly. Loneliness here was not heavy. It was spacious, like the land itself, allowing thoughts to wander without urgency. In ancient Egypt, morning light reached temple walls, pale and steady. Priests entered cool halls where silence lived between carved pillars. Rituals were performed with calm repetition, each gesture familiar and measured. In such quiet places, solitude was woven into daily devotion. A priest standing alone before a statue, whispering words older than memory, might feel both connected and separate, both seen and unseen. Loneliness did not interrupt the moment. It rested beside it, quiet as shadow. Along the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates, early cities stirred awake. Boats drifted slowly across the water, guided by steady hands. A fisherman alone on the river watched reflections ripple and reform. The sound of water touching wood, soft and endless, filled the space where voices were absent. These solitary moments were common, simple, almost unnoticed. Yet within them, a person might feel the quiet presence of their own thoughts, clear and undisturbed. In ancient Greece, thinkers sometimes began their day walking alone before others gathered. The early hour carried a gentle silence, broken only by distant movement and soft wind through olive leaves. Solitude in these moments felt natural, like the pause before speech. A philosopher might reflect on life, on friendship, on the strange. Balance between needing others and standing apart from them. These reflections were not urgent. They moved slowly, like morning light spreading across stone, across the plains of early India. Travelers set out before the heat of day. Some walked in groups, sharing brief conversation. Others walked alone, their footsteps steady against packed earth. The road stretched forward without hurry. Trees offered shade, then released it. A solitary traveler might feel both freedom and distance, both calm and quiet longing, not strong enough to trouble the heart, only enough to remind them of connection. Waiting somewhere ahead. In early Chinese writings, morning solitude often carried a gentle clarity, mist rising from water, a lone figure watching the first light touch distant hills. The world felt fresh, unspoken, wide with quiet possibility. Scholars sometimes welcomed this hour, when thoughts moved slowly and the mind rested between dreams and waking. Yet even in peaceful reflection, there could be a faint awareness of separation, soft as a cloud passing across open sky. In northern lands, where forests stood deep and patient, early morning brought a stillness that seemed almost complete. Frost touched leaves. Breath rose in pale air. A hunter walking alone through silent trees heard only the soft sound of their own movement. Here solitude felt ancient, older than words, part of the land itself. Loneliness was not always a feeling, but sometimes a quiet condition. Like the long winter or the slow return of spring, the sun rises gradually now, warming stone, earth, and quiet water. The day begins again, steady and unchanged. Voices will gather. Work will continue. Life will move in its familiar patterns. Yet within each person, the gentle space of solitude remains, neither empty nor full, simply present, like a calm and silent room within the wider house of human existence. And so the journey through this quiet understanding continues, unhurried and soft, as time carries us further into the subtle ways ancient hearts lived with loneliness, neither resisting nor holding it too tightly, allowing it to pass like morning mist beneath a waking sky. The sun has climbed gently into the sky, spreading a soft warmth across fields, stone paths, and quiet waters. The world of long ago moves forward in its familiar rhythm. Nothing feels rushed, nothing demands attention. The day unfolds as it has countless times before, steady and calm, and within this ordinary flow. Solitude continues to appear in small and subtle ways. In ancient villages, daily life was shared. People worked side by side, exchanging few words, yet understanding much through presence alone. The sound of tools against wood, of grain falling into clay bowls, of footsteps brushing dust from the ground. These simple sounds filled the spaces where silence might otherwise rest. Still, even surrounded by others, a person sometimes drifted inward, noticing a quiet separation that could not be seen from the outside. Loneliness here was not isolation. It was a soft inward turning, like a leaf slowly folding toward shade. In Mesopotamia, where cities rose from earth and river, scribes spent long hours shaping symbols into clay. Their work required patience and stillness. A scribe seated alone, pressing careful marks into soft tablets, might hear only the faint movement of air and distant voices beyond thick walls. In such moments, solitude was ordinary. Yet the human mind leapt in quiet, often wandered. Memories, questions, small reflections passed gently through awareness, like clouds moving across a broad sky. Loneliness here was not dramatic, only a quiet presence, barely spoken yet quietly known. Along the Nile, fishermen and boatmen often moved alone upon wide, slow water. The river stretched endlessly, reflecting sky and sun in shifting patterns. Hours passed with little sound beyond the gentle rhythm of water against wood. These solitary stretches were part of life, neither sought nor avoided. A boatman might feel calm, steady, yet faintly aware of distance from others, as if floating between worlds, neither fully alone nor fully joined. In ancient Greece, poets sometimes described figures pausing apart from gatherings, watching rather than speaking. A shepherd resting beneath open sky, a traveler seated beside a narrow road, a thinker observing waves roll softly toward shore. These scenes were not sorrowful. They carried a quiet attentiveness, where solitude allowed the mind to notice small details otherwise lost in noise. Still, the poets also understood that too much distance could weigh gently upon the heart, like a long shadow stretching across afternoon ground. In early India, hermits and wanderers continued their quiet lives beyond busy settlements. Days passed in meditation, reflection, and simple routines shaped by nature rather than society. For many, solitude felt peaceful, almost necessary. Yet ancient verses sometimes hinted at softer feelings beneath this calm. A remembered voice, a distant home, a fleeting sense of separation that appeared briefly, then faded, like ripples dissolving in still water. In early China, scholars who stepped away from court life often wrote of observing the world from quiet distance. Sitting beside flowing streams, they watched leaves drift slowly past, each carried by unseen currents. Solitude here was thoughtful, gentle, almost companionable. Yet even in chosen quiet, there were moments when the absence of shared presence felt noticeable, like a room that echoes faintly after laughter has gone. Across northern forests, where wind moved steadily through tall trees, solitude blended with the landscape itself. A woodcutter, working alone, heard only the rhythm of their own movement, steady and familiar. A watcher at the edge of a settlement stood beneath open sky, listening to night approach long before others noticed. In these lands, loneliness was rarely named. It was simply part of existence, like the changing seasons or the quiet turning of stars overhead. Not all solitude belonged to individuals. Sometimes it seemed to rest in places, empty fields after harvest, quiet roads between distant villages. ruins where voices once gathered. Ancient people often felt these spaces carried their own silence, reflecting something within the human heart. To walk alone through such places was to feel both small and connected, both separate and quietly part of the wider world. The afternoon begins to soften now. Shadows lengthen slowly across earth and stone. Voices continue, steady and calm, yet beneath them, the gentle awareness of solitude remains, unchanged and unhurried, moving quietly through human life like a slow and patient current beneath the surface of a peaceful sea. Evening begins its slow return. The sun lowers gently, casting long and quiet shadows across fields, walls, and winding paths. The air cools in small, almost unnoticed ways. The ancient world prepares once more for rest, just as it has done for countless days before. Nothing feels sudden, nothing feels heavy. The rhythm continues, steady and calm, like a soft breath moving in and out of time. People return from fields, rivers, and roads, their movements slow and familiar. Doors open, then close. Fires are lit, their glow warm and steady against the approaching dark. Voices gather briefly, sharing simple words, then fade into softer tones. And beneath these ordinary moments, solitude continues to exist quietly. Never fully absent, never fully overwhelming. In ancient Mesopotamia, as the light faded from narrow streets and clay walls cooled, individuals often withdrew into private stillness. A worker resting after long labor, a widow seated beside a quiet doorway, a scribe finishing the last marks of the day by dim lamplight. These were not dramatic scenes. They were gentle and human. Loneliness here was not always sorrowful. Often, it was a calm recognition of being one life among many. A quiet pause between shared moments. Along the Nile, nightfall brought a different stillness. The river darkened, reflecting faint stars upon its slow surface. A lone fisherman, still, awake beside the water, might listen to the soft ripple of movement, steady and endless. The world felt vast and silent, yet not empty. Within that silence, the human heart could feel both small and connected, both separate and quietly present in the larger flow of life. In ancient Greece, evening was often a time of reflection. Philosophers and ordinary people alike sensed a gentle inward turning as the noise of day softened. A figure seated beneath fading light might think of friendship, of shared meals, of voices now distant. Solitude was not feared. It was part of being alive, part of the quiet balance between connection and individuality. Yet even in calm reflection, a faint longing could appear, soft as twilight itself. In early India, night often carried sacred quiet. Forest hermitages rested beneath wide skies, where stars shone steadily and wind moved gently through leaves. A solitary figure in meditation might feel both peace and subtle distance, both closeness to existence and awareness of their own separate path. Ancient writings sometimes spoke of this state with gentle acceptance, neither praising nor rejecting it, simply observing. In early China, poets described evening solitude with delicate simplicity. A lantern glowing beside a wooden window, the distant sound of a flute carried through cool air, the reflection of moonlight on still water. These images were calm and unhurried, revealing loneliness not as distress, but as a quiet moment of presence, where the world seemed both near and far at once. Across northern lands, Long twilight stretched beneath pale skies. The forest darkened slowly, and stars appeared one by one. A lone watcher at the edge of a settlement might stand quietly, listening to night deepen. The silence here was complete yet gentle, surrounding without pressing. Loneliness in such places was not loud. It was spacious, like the sky itself, allowing thoughts to drift freely without direction. Even within busy cities of ancient Rome, night created private spaces of stillness. A guard walking slowly beneath dim torchlight, a writer closing a scroll, and resting in quiet thought, a mother awake while others slept, listening to the soft breathing of a child. These were small moments, unnoticed by history, yet deeply human. Loneliness appeared softly here, like a shadow resting beside the warmth of connection. The oil lamp burns lower again, its flame steady but fragile, casting a warm circle of light within surrounding darkness. Somewhere, an ancient figure lies, between waking and sleep, aware of a gentle inner space where thoughts slow and soften, not troubled, not entirely peaceful, simply present as humans have always been, within that quiet place where solitude touches the heart without speaking. And so the third passage of this calm journey settles into night. Loneliness in ancient times remains neither dark nor bright, neither enemy nor guide, but a quiet companion moving softly through human life. As constant and gentle as the slow turning of the earth beneath a silent and endless sky. The night passes quietly, and once again the world begins its slow return to light. A pale grey spreads across the horizon, soft and patient. Nothing stirs quickly. The ancient earth wakes in the same calm rhythm it has always known. Dew rests on grass. The air feels cool and still. Somewhere, far away, a single bird calls. Then silence returns, as if the world is listening. Time moves forward, gentle and unmarked. Another day begins in distant centuries, where people rise from simple sleeping places, stretch slowly, and step into morning light. Fires are coaxed back to life. Clay vessels are lifted. Water is carried along narrow paths worn smooth by countless quiet journeys. Life continues, steady and familiar. And within this steady movement, solitude remains present, neither hidden nor overwhelming, simply part of the human condition. In ancient Egypt, morning light touches temple walls and tall stone columns. The air inside remains cool and still. Priests move quietly through sacred halls, their footsteps soft, their voices low. Rituals unfold with calm repetition, each gesture known, each motion measured. In these moments, solitude often accompanies devotion. A single figure standing before a silent statue may feel both connected and separate, both watched and alone. Loneliness here is not sorrowful. It is quiet, almost sacred, like the hush between breaths. Along the riverbanks, farmers begin their day in shared rhythm. Hands move through soil, placing seeds, turning earth. Voices rise briefly, then fade as work continues. Yet even in closeness, the human mind sometimes drifts inward. A farmer may pause, leaning lightly on a wooden tool, gazing across open fields, where the horizon stretches far and wide. The land feels vast, and within that vastness, a person feels gently alone, not isolated, simply aware of their singular place within the larger world. In the cities of Mesopotamia, narrow streets slowly fill with movement. Merchants open small stalls, potters shape clay, bakers tent warm ovens. Life here is close and layered, yet moments of solitude still appear quietly between shared activity. A scribe seated alone presses symbols into damp clay, the room silent, except for the faint scratch of a stylus. In such stillness, thoughts move slowly, like clouds across an open sky. Loneliness is not heavy. It is a soft inward space where the mind rests for a while. In ancient Greece, morning sometimes finds thinkers walking beyond crowded squares, toward shaded paths and quiet hills. The early hour carries a gentle stillness, broken only by wind. Through olive leaves, solitude feels natural here, like the pause before conversation begins. A philosopher may reflect on the nature of connection, on the way humans gather and separate like waves along a shore. These reflections do not seek answers. They drift, calm and unhurried, like the movement of light across stone. Across early India, long roads stretch between forests and villages. Travelers begin their journeys while the air remains cool. Some walk together, exchanging soft words. Others walk alone, their footsteps steady against earth. Trees offer shade, then release it. Silence returns between sounds of movement. In these solitary stretches, loneliness may appear softly, like a distant echo, not troubling, not sharp, simply present, reminding the traveler of both separation and connection waiting somewhere ahead. In early Chinese landscapes, morning mist rises slowly from rivers and fields. A lone figure stands beside water, watching light spread across distant hills. Scholars often welcomed this quiet hour, when thoughts move gently and the world seems suspended between night and day. Solitude here felt clear, almost peaceful, yet beneath it, there could be a faint awareness of distance, soft as a passing cloud. In northern lands, forests remain deep and patient beneath pale morning light. Frost clings lightly to leaves. A hunter walks alone between tall trees, hearing only the soft sound of each careful step. The silence is complete, yet calm, surrounding without pressing. Loneliness here is not dramatic. It blends with the landscape, as natural as the slow change of seasons. The sun begins to rise higher now, warming earth and stone. The day continues in its quiet rhythm. Voices will gather, work will unfold, life will move gently forward. Yet within each person, the subtle presence of solitude remains, steady and familiar, like a quiet room within the wider house of human existence. And so the journey drifts onward, unhurried and calm, as time carries us deeper into the ancient understanding of loneliness, where it was neither feared nor chased away, but allowed to exist softly, like morning mist beneath a waking sky. The sun has moved higher, though it does so quietly, without urgency. Light rests across open ground and stone walls, touching everything with a soft warmth. The ancient world continues its slow rhythm. People work, speak, pause, and move again, each action part of a pattern repeated across generations. Nothing feels hurried, nothing feels loud, and within this gentle movement, solitude remains subtle and steady, like a quiet current beneath calm water. In early settlements, the center of life was often a shared space, a courtyard, a well, a shaded place where people gathered for daily tasks. Voices rose and fell softly, carrying small stories, brief laughter, and ordinary concerns. Yet even here, in the presence of others, a person could feel a quiet, inward turning. The human mind, at times, wandered beyond immediate surroundings, entering a private space where thoughts moved slowly and quietly. Loneliness here was not separation from the group, but a gentle awareness of one's own inner world. Separate yet calm. In Mesopotamia, as the day deepened, temple courtyards grew still between rituals. Stone walls held the warmth of sunlight, and shadows stretched slowly across the ground. A caretaker sweeping dust from worn paths might pause, listening to the faint echo of movement beyond sight. These moments of solitude were simple and familiar. The absence of voices did not feel empty. It felt like a pause, a breath within the larger rhythm of life. Loneliness was not feared here. It was part of being present, part of existing quietly within a vast and enduring world. Along the Nile, midday often brought stillness. The river moved slowly, reflecting the bright sky in shifting patterns. A fisherman resting in his small boat might drift for a time, surrounded only by water and light. The silence of such moments was not complete, yet it was deep. The human heart, in that quiet, sometimes sensed a gentle distance from others, a soft reminder of individuality. Not sorrowful, not troubling, simply real, like the slow movement of the river itself. In ancient Greece, philosophers sometimes spoke of the balance between shared life and solitary reflection. They observed that humans gathered naturally, seeking companionship, yet also required moments alone to understand their own thoughts. A thinker sitting beneath an olive tree might watch the slow movement of clouds, noticing how silence allowed the mind to settle. Yet even in calm reflection, there could be a faint longing for voices, for shared presence, for the warmth of simple human connection. Across the roads of early India, travelers continued their journeys beneath the steady sun. The path stretched forward, winding gently through fields and forests. Companions sometimes walked together, then separated when routes diverged. A solitary traveler might pause beneath a tree, resting in shade, listening to wind move through leaves. In such quiet moments, loneliness appeared softly, like a distant memory. Not heavy, not sharp, only a gentle presence, reminding the traveler of both distance and belonging. In early China, scholars who lived in retreat often spent long hours observing nature. Bamboo leaves swayed slowly, water flowed without sound. The world moved in calm repetition. Solitude here was thoughtful, almost companionable, allowing the mind to settle into quiet clarity. Yet even within peaceful retreat, there were moments when the absence of shared presence felt noticeable, like a room that holds silence after conversation fades. In northern lands, the forests carried a stillness shaped by long seasons. A woodcutter, working alone, heard only the rhythm of their own movement. An observer at the edge of a settlement watched the horizon where sky met distant hills. The silence was wide and patient. Loneliness here was not dramatic. It was part of endurance, part of continuing through time with quiet strength. Not all solitude belonged to individuals alone. Sometimes it rested in places. A quiet road between villages, a field left empty after harvest, ruins where voices once gathered and then faded into history. Ancient people often felt these spaces, carried their own silence, reflecting something within the human heart. To walk alone through such places was to feel both small and connected, both separate and quietly part of the wider world. The afternoon begins to soften now. Shadows grow longer across earth and stone. The sounds of the day continue, steady and familiar, yet beneath them, solitude remains unchanged, moving softly through human life like a slow and gentle tide beneath the surface of a calm and endless sea. The day begins its slow descent toward evening once again. The sun lowers gently, and its light grows softer, spreading long shadows across worn paths and quiet fields. The ancient world does not rush this transition. It unfolds calmly, as it always has, moving from brightness into stillness with quiet patience. The air cools slightly, sounds fade. Another day settles toward rest. People return from their work in unhurried steps. Clay vessels are set down, tools are placed aside, doors close softly, one by one. Fires are lit, their small flames, steady and warm against the approaching dark. Voices gather briefly in shared spaces, then grow quieter, blending into the gentle hush of evening. And within this familiar rhythm, solitude remains, neither absent nor overwhelming, simply part of the quiet movement of human life. In ancient Mesopotamia, evening often brought a soft stillness between the narrow streets and clay walls of early cities. A merchant closing his stall might linger for a moment, watching the last light fade from the horizon. A scribe, alone in a small room, completes the final lines of the day, his stylus moving slowly across damp clay. The silence here is calm, almost comforting. Loneliness is not heavy. It is a gentle awareness, like the space between breaths, present but not troubling. Along the Nile, the river darkens as twilight spreads across the water. A lone boat drifts quietly near the bank. The surface reflects faint stars, trembling softly with each slow ripple. A fisherman sits without speaking, listening to the endless movement of water. In this quiet, the world feels vast, yet not empty. Loneliness appears here as a soft recognition of being one small life within something much larger, neither frightening nor sorrowful, simply real. In ancient Greece, evening often invited reflection. The noise of the day faded, and the human mind turned inward. A figure seated beneath fading light might think of friendship, of shared laughter, of voices now distant. Solitude was not feared. It was part of being alive, part of the balance between connection and individuality. Yet within calm reflection, a faint longing sometimes appeared, soft and fleeting, like the last glow of sunset disappearing beyond distant hills. In early India, sacred quiet often filled the night. Forest hermitages rested beneath wide skies scattered with silent stars. A solitary figure in meditation might feel both peace and subtle distance, both closeness to existence and awareness of their own separate path. Ancient teachings did not reject this feeling. They allowed it, observing it gently, like watching a leaf drift across still water in early China. Poets described the evening solitude with delicate calm. A lantern glowing beside a wooden window, moonlight resting on quiet rooftops, the distant sound of a flute carried softly through cool air. These scenes held no urgency, only a quiet presence. Loneliness here was not distress. It was a soft moment of awareness where the world seemed both near and far at once. Across northern lands, twilight stretched long beneath pale skies. Forests darkened slowly, and the first stars appeared one by one. A lone watcher at the edge of a settlement stood quietly, listening to the silence deepen. The stillness here was wide and gentle, surrounding without pressing. Loneliness blended with the landscape itself, spacious and calm, like the open sky above. Even in ancient Rome, when the busy streets emptied and footsteps faded, quiet spaces emerged. A guard walking slowly beneath dim torchlight. A rider finishing a scroll by a soft lamplight. A mother awake while others slept, listening to the steady breathing of a child. These moments were small, unnoticed by history, yet deeply human. Loneliness appeared softly here, like a shadow resting beside warmth and connection. The oil lamp burns low again, its flames steady yet fragile, casting a soft circle of light within the surrounding darkness. Somewhere, an ancient figure lies between waking and sleep, aware of a quiet inner space where thoughts slow and soften. Not troubled, not entirely peaceful, simply present as humans have always been, within that gentle place where solitude touches the heart without words. And so the fourth passage of this calm journey settles into night. Loneliness, in ancient times, remains neither dark nor bright, neither enemy nor guide, but a quiet companion moving softly through human life, as constant and gentle as the slow turning of the earth beneath a silent and endless sky. Night slowly loosens its quiet hold, and the faintest light begins to gather once more along the edge of the sky. The world of long ago wakes gently, as it always has, without urgency or sound. Cool air rests over fields and rooftops. Dew forms silently on grass and stone. Somewhere, far away, a single bird calls into the pale morning, then pauses, as if listening for an answer carried on the stillness. Another day begins in the ancient world. Fires are stirred back to life. Clay jars are lifted. Water is carried. Along familiar paths worn smooth by countless quiet footsteps. Life continues in calm repetition. Nothing feels hurried. Nothing feels loud. And within this steady rhythm, solitude remains, soft and constant, like a quiet presence walking beside each human heart. In early farming villages, the morning often began before full light arrived. A farmer steps outside, alone for a moment. The sky wide and empty above. The land stretches gently outward, fields waiting in silence. This early hour belongs to stillness. A person standing there may feel neither lonely nor fully connected, simply aware of being one small life within a vast and patient world. The feeling is quiet, almost unnoticed, like breath moving in cool air. In ancient Egypt, dawn light touches the smooth surfaces of temple stone. The halls remain silent, holding the calm of centuries. A priest walks slowly between tall columns, preparing for rituals that will unfold with careful repetition. In these quiet moments before voices rise, solitude feels almost sacred. A single figure standing in soft light senses both presence and distance, both connection and separation, like standing between shadow and sun. Along the Nile, fishermen begin their slow work as mist lifts from the water. Some boats move together, others drift alone. A solitary figure casting a net listens only to the gentle movement of water against wood, Time passes quietly here. The river does not rush. The sky reflects softly below. Loneliness, if it appears, is not sharp or heavy. It is a soft awareness, like the slow ripple spreading across still water. In ancient Greece, early mornings, sometimes, found thinkers walking beyond crowded streets into quieter spaces. Olive trees cast long shadows across cool ground. The air carries the faint scent of earth and leaves. Solitude here feels natural, like a pause before speech. A philosopher may reflect slowly, not searching for answers, simply observing the balance between being among others and standing quietly apart. Loneliness is not feared. It is noticed, like a passing cloud across open sky. Across early India, long roads stretch between villages, forests, and distant rivers. Travelers begin their journeys in the gentle cool of morning. Some walk in groups, sharing quiet conversation. Others walk alone, their footsteps steady and unhurried. The road curves softly forward. Silence returns between sounds. In these moments, loneliness may appear faintly, like a distant echo, reminding the traveler of both separation and connection waiting somewhere ahead. In early Chinese landscapes, morning mist rises slowly from rivers and fields. A lone figure stands beside still water, watching light spread across distant hills. Scholars often welcomed this hour, when thoughts moved gently and the world felt calm and open. Solitude here is peaceful, almost clear, yet beneath it lies a subtle awareness of distance, soft as mist, dissolving in sunlight. In northern lands, forests remain deep and quiet beneath pale dawn. Frost touches leaves lightly. A hunter walks alone through tall trees, hearing only the soft rhythm of each careful step. The silence feels complete, yet gentle, surrounding without pressing. Loneliness here blends with the landscape, neither heavy nor light, simply present like the slow turning of seasons. The sun begins its gradual rise, warming earth and stone. The day unfolds again in its quiet pattern. Voices will gather, work will continue, life will move forward as it always has. Yet within each person, the soft space of solitude remains, steady and familiar, like a quiet room within the wider house of human existence. And so the journey drifts onward, calm and unhurried, as time carries us deeper into the ancient understanding of loneliness, where it was neither pushed away nor tightly held, but allowed to exist gently, like morning light spreading across a silent and waking world. The morning has settled into a gentle brightness. Light rests quietly on fields, rooftops, and slow-moving water. The ancient world continues its calm rhythm, steady and familiar. People move through their daily tasks without hurry. Hands work soil. Clay turns beneath careful fingers. Footsteps pass softly along worn paths. And within this quiet movement of life, solitude remains present, subtle and steady, like a faint echo that never fully fades. In early villages, the day is shared through simple routines. A woman grinds grain beside others, the sound rhythmic and soft. A child watches the slow turning of a wheel. Voices rise briefly, then fall back into calm silence. Yet, even surrounded by presence, the mind sometimes drifts inward, entering a private space untouched by others. Loneliness here is not separation from the world. It is a gentle, inward stillness, where thoughts move slowly, like clouds across a wide sky. In Mesopotamia, as the sun climbs higher, the narrow streets grow warm and quiet between moments of activity. A potter shaping clay in a shaded corner works alone, listening only to the soft movement of hands and wheel. The world feels distant, though nothing has changed. Solitude in such moments is simple and familiar. It does not demand attention. It rests quietly beside awareness, like a shadow that moves gently with the light. Along the Nile, midday often brings a hush. The river flows steadily, reflecting sky and sun in shifting patterns. A fisherman resting in his small boat drifts slowly, surrounded by water and brightness. The silence here is deep yet calm. Loneliness, if it appears, is soft and passing, like the slow ripples spreading outward from a single drop. It reminds the heart of its own quiet rhythm, steady and unchanged. In ancient Greece, thinkers sometimes spoke of solitude as a mirror. When the noise of the world softened, a person could see their own thoughts more clearly. A figure seated beneath an olive tree watches leaves move gently in warm air. The mind drifts, observing without effort. Yet even in peaceful reflection, there may be a faint sense of distance, a subtle awareness of standing slightly apart, like a single note within a long and quiet song. Across early India, travelers continue along dusty roads beneath the steady sun. Companions walk together for a time, then part as paths divide. A solitary traveler pauses beneath a tree, resting in shade, listening to the wind moving softly through leaves. The moment is calm and unhurried. Loneliness appears gently here, like a memory just beyond reach, neither heavy nor troubling. Simply present. In early China, scholars who withdrew from busy life often found themselves surrounded by quiet beauty. Bamboo leaves whisper softly. Water flows without sound. The world moves in slow repetition. Solitude here feels thoughtful, almost companionable. Yet even within chosen stillness, there are moments when the absence of shared presence becomes noticeable, like a room that holds silence after voices have faded. In northern forests, the air carries a steady calm shaped by long seasons. A woodcutter working alone hears only the rhythm of their own movement. A watcher at the edge of a settlement gazes toward distant hills where sky meets earth. The silence is wide and patient. Loneliness here blends with endurance, part of continuing through time with quiet strength. Not all solitude belongs to people alone. Sometimes it seems to rest in places, an empty path between villages, a field left still after harvest, a quiet ruin where voices once gathered and slowly disappeared into memory. Ancient people often felt these places held their own silence, reflecting something within the human heart. To walk alone through such spaces is to feel both separate and connected, both small and quietly part of the wider world. The afternoon light begins to soften now. Shadows stretch slowly across earth and stone. The sounds of the day continue, steady and familiar, yet beneath them, solitude remains unchanged. Moving gently through human life like a slow and patient tide beneath the surface of a calm and endless sea. Evening returns once more, quietly and without announcement. The sun lowers slowly, its light softening as it stretches across fields, rivers, and worn paths. Shadows grow long and gentle. The air cools in small, unnoticed ways. The ancient world moves toward rest again, steady and calm like a breath. easing into silence. People begin to return from their daily work. Clay vessels are set down carefully. Tools rest where hands leave them. Doors close with soft sounds. Fires are lit, their warm glow steady against the deepening dusk. Voices gather briefly in shared spaces, speaking simple words, then fading into softer tones. And within these familiar moments, solitude remains present, quiet and unchanged. Like a still pool beneath moving water in the cities of Mesopotamia. Evening often brought a gentle hush between clay walls and narrow streets. A merchant sits for a moment outside his small shop, watching the last light fade beyond distant rooftops. A scribe, alone in a dim room, finishes the final marks of the day. The silence here feels calm, almost comforting. Loneliness is not heavy. It is a soft awareness, like the space between heartbeats, present but not troubling. Along the Nile, twilight settles over slow-moving water. The river darkens, reflecting faint stars in trembling patterns. A lone boat rests near the bank. A fisherman sits quietly, listening to the endless rhythm of water touching wood. The world feels vast, yet not empty. Loneliness appears here as a gentle recognition of being one life within something much larger. Neither frightening nor sorrowful. Simply real. In ancient Greece, evening often invited quiet reflection. As the noise of the day softened, the mind turned inward. A figure seated beneath fading light might think of friendship, of shared meals, of voices now distant. Solitude was not feared. It was part of life, part of the balance between connection and individuality. Yet within calm reflection, a faint longing sometimes appeared, soft and fleeting. Like the last glow of sunset slipping beyond distant hills. In early India, night carried sacred stillness. Forest hermitages rested beneath wide skies scattered with silent stars. A solitary figure in meditation might feel both peace and subtle distance, both closeness to existence and awareness of their own separate path. Ancient teachings did not resist this feeling. They observed it gently, like watching a ripple fade across still water. In early China, poets described evening solitude with quiet grace. A lantern glowing beside a wooden window, moonlight resting on silent rooftops. The distant sound of a flute carried softly through cool air. These moments held no urgency, only calm presence. Loneliness here was not distress. It was a quiet awareness, where the world seemed both near and far at once. Across northern lands, twilight stretched long beneath pale skies. Forests darkened slowly, and stars appeared one by one. A lone watcher at the edge of a settlement stood quietly, listening. As night deepened, the stillness here was wide and gentle, surrounding without pressing. Loneliness blended with the landscape, spacious and calm, like the open sky above. Even in ancient Rome, when busy streets emptied and footsteps faded, quiet spaces emerged. A guard walking slowly beneath dim torchlight, a writer closing a scroll, and resting in silent thought, a mother awake while others slept, listening to the steady breathing of a child. These were small, unnoticed moments, yet deeply human. Loneliness appeared softly here, like a shadow resting beside warmth and connection. The oil lamp burns low again, its flame steady yet fragile, casting a warm circle of light within surrounding darkness. Somewhere, an ancient figure lies between, waking and sleep, aware of a quiet inner space where thoughts slow and soften, not troubled, not entirely peaceful, simply present, as humans have always been, within that gentle place where solitude touches the heart without words. And so though fifth passage of this calm journey settles into night, loneliness in ancient times remains neither dark nor bright, neither burden nor escape, but a quiet companion moving softly through human life, as constant and gentle as the slow turning of the earth beneath a silent and endless sky.